everybody. Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. In case you missed it, last night I put out a very short but effective episode of this podcast. I wanted to, in one spot, put all of the speeches that I think you should hear heading into this week, because I have no doubt, whether it's at work, around the water cooler, at the dog park, wherever, it's going to come up, the situation happening in the Middle East. So in that special edition, which I believe was only 17 minutes, I gave you President Trump announcing why the military action was happening, Prime Minister Caine with Canada's official position on that military operation over in Iran, and you heard from the British Prime Minister as well, just to add a little more context and a slightly different view from a G7 leader, because the UK does not seem to be completely aligned with Canada and the US on this one. So if you want to hear that in their own words from the leaders, go back and give that episode a listen. I think it's a good primer to head into the week. On this episode of Scott Fox After 9, wow, have I got a doozy for you. I've got a special guest coming up in a few minutes. Her name is Julie. She is an internationally recognized expert on human rights, particularly women's rights. And she's going to talk about the evolving situation in Iran. Before I get to Julie, and that's going to be a great interview, I really hope you can stick around on this episode and hear what she has to say. I want to bring you the latest from CENTCOM. By the way, that is Central Command. If you've heard that term tossed around over the weekend and wasn't sure what it meant, CENTCOM is the leadership of the U.S. military complex. I'm going to start off with a briefing that happened this morning with the U.S. Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth.
2 days ago, under the direction and direct orders of President Donald J. Trump, the Department of War launched Operation Epic Fury, the most lethal, most complex, and most precise aerial operation in history. For 47 long years, the expansionist and Islamist regime in Tehran has waged a savage, one-sided war against America. They didn't always declare it openly, except for their constant chants of death to America. They did it through the blood of our people. Car bombs in Beirut, rocket attacks on our ships, murders at our embassies, roadside bombs in Iraq and Afghanistan, funded and armed by Iranian Quds Force and IRGC killers. My generation of veterans carry the names of brothers who never came home. Brothers butchered by Iranian-backed roadside bombs and well-armed militias, thousands of our own. We didn't start this war, but under President Trump, we are finishing it. Their war on Americans has become our retribution against their Ayatollah and his death cult. It took the 47th president, a fighter who always puts America first, to finally draw the line after 47 years of Iranian belligerence. He reminded the world, as he has time and time again, being an American means something unbreakable. If you kill Americans, if you threaten Americans anywhere on earth, we will hunt you down without apology and without hesitation, and we will kill you. President Trump has also been very consistent. Crazy regimes like Iran, hell-bent on prophetic Islamist delusions, cannot have nuclear weapons. It's common sense. Many have said it, but it takes guts to actually enforce it, and our president has guts. Iran's stubborn and self-evident nuclear pursuits, their targeting of global shipping lanes, and their swelling arsenal of ballistic missiles and killer drones are no longer tolerable risks. Iran was building powerful missiles and drones to create a conventional shield for their nuclear blackmail ambitions. Let me say that again. A conventional shield for their nuclear blackmail ambitions. Our bases, our people, our allies, all in their crosshairs. Iran had a conventional gun to our head as they tried to lie their way to a nuclear bomb. It almost worked under Obama and his terrible deal, but not under this president. Turns out the regime who chanted death to America and death to Israel was gifted death from America and death from Israel. This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change, and the world is better off for it. Today, in their desperation, the enemy is unmasked. As Iranian missiles and drones rain down indiscriminately on the hotels, airports, apartments, and other civilian targets of their neighbors. Cowardly terrorist tactics from a regime that for decades has trafficked in cowardly terrorist tactics, lies, death, and destruction to this day. The Iranian leadership has built nothing except proxies and missiles and drones and deeply buried nuclear factories and facilities. Peaceful nuclear ambitions do not need to be buried underneath mountains.
Okay, I think that's a pretty good lead in here from the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, basically making the case that this wasn't just about making sure the Iranian regime doesn't ever get a nuclear weapon. It was also about taking away their ability to launch proxy terror attacks on Americans and on American military. Let's get to some operational stuff so you can get the latest on what's happening on the ground. This is Air Force General Dan Caine with an update on the situation in the Middle East.
On Friday, February 27th, the United States Central Command, through the Secretary of War, received the final go order from President Trump. The president directed, and I quote, "Operation Epic Fury is approved. No aborts. Good luck," close quote. In the region, every element of the joint force made their final preparations. Air defense batteries readied themselves, checking their systems to respond to Iranian attacks. Pilots and crews rehearsed their strike packages for the final time. Air crews began loading their final weapons, and two carrier strike groups began to move towards their launching points. Across the globe, our operations centers came alive in Tampa, Florida, here at the Pentagon, and of course forward in the Central Command AOR. As always, operational security was paramount as we sought to maintain and sustain the element of surprise. This operation was highly classified so that at H hour, the enemy would see one thing: speed, surprise, and violence of action. The first movers were U.S. Cybercom and U.S. Spacecom, layering non-kinetic effects, disrupting and degrading and blinding Iran's ability to see, communicate, and respond. At H hour, the beginning of major combat operations, 01:15 local Eastern Daylight Time, 9:45 local AM Tehran time, as dawn crept up across the Central Command AOR, the skies surged to life. More than 100 aircraft launched from land, sea, fighters, tankers, airborne early warning, electronic attack, bombers from the States, and unmanned platforms, forming a single synchronized wave. This was a daylight strike based on a trigger event conducted by the Israeli Defense Forces, enabled by the U.S. intelligence community. The first shooters at sea were Tomahawks unleashed by the United States Navy, closed in on Iranian naval forces, and began to conduct strikes across the southern flank in Iran. On the ground, forces fired precision standoff weapons, measured, deliberate, precise, and lethal. This was a massive, overwhelming attack across all domains of warfare, striking more than 1,000 targets in the first 24 hours. We are now roughly 57 hours into the operation. In the initial phase, CENTCOM's focus was systematic targeting of Iranian's command and control infrastructure, naval forces, ballistic missile sites, and intelligence infrastructure designed to daze and confuse them. Coordinated space and cyber operations effectively disrupted communications and sensor networks across the area of responsibility, leaving the adversary without the ability to see, coordinate, or respond effectively. The combined impact of these strikes, swift, precise, and overwhelming, has resulted in the establishment of local air superiority. This air superiority will not only enhance the protection of our forces, but also allow them to continue the work over Iran.
So as you can hear, this is a massive military operation against the Iranian regime and the Iranian military. It's a lot to take in, isn't it? I mean, wow. When you hear him describe it like that, this was a well-coordinated attack. I am going to get to Julie to talk about what's happening in Iran now and what's next for Iran coming up in a few minutes. First off, I want to give General Dan Caine just a little bit more time to talk about the situation in Iran before we get to the guest.
As the threat grew, our partners surged in beside us. Air defense batteries in Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia joined the fight, proof positive that years of training, trust, and hard-earned integration pay off. I am aware of the loss of 3 U.S. Air Force F-15Es overnight in the region. I am grateful for the safety of the crews, and we know that this was not from hostile enemy fire. As this matter's under investigation, I'll not comment further on this. Let me close. Operations will remain active across the theater and across the globe. The U.S. forces are postured not only to maintain pressure, but to respond and adapt as required. Operation Epic Fury stands as a reminder of what the United States military uniquely delivers: the ability to project power on a global scale with speed, surprise, precision, and overwhelming force when and where our nation requires it. What we've demonstrated over the past several days reflects years of investment in readiness, joint integration, and professionalism of the joint force. As major combat operations continue across CENTCOM, we remain engaged globally. America's joint force retains the credibility, capacity, and flexibility to respond to any contingency anywhere in the world at any time. To those who would test our resolve or threaten the United States, our allies, or our interests, understand clearly we can reach you, we can sustain the fight, and we can scale the fight, and we will prevail.
Wow. I mean, the scale of this operation sounds like something that we've never seen before. It is an incredible military buildup that the U.S. had outside Iran, ready and in preparation for this attack. Now, I think we need a little more context because there's a lot of people, myself included, that are really trying to struggle to understand the history of this situation, what's going on right now, and maybe some people aren't even exactly sure how they feel about what's going on in Iran. So I'm going to bring in someone that I consider an expert. Her name is Julie Rocchese. She is an education professional. She is internationally recognized as an advocate for human and women's rights. She's won a humanitarian award, a global excellence award, and she is someone that can definitely speak to the situation in Iran. 47 years of history here is a lot to try and sum up in one interview, but we're going to give it a crack. So I'm going to say hello to Julie. How are you?
Good morning. I am well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You know what? I'm glad you could come on, and I'll give full credit. You and I have known each other for a long time, but it wasn't until I heard you on Ben Mulrooney's show that I thought, oh, geez, I should get Julie on.
Yes, we have known each other for a long time, and that's because, you know what, for the longest time, I remained silent. I never really talked about Iran much, and it was just recently that, honestly, the silence felt like suffocating me. And I said, you know what, the truth needs to be told. There's a lot of, misinformation, and people are, getting it wrong. And we need to, education is power. We need to inform people as to what has been happening in Iran.
I couldn't agree with you more. So let's start off with why this is happening now. The U.S. is making the case that Iran presented an imminent threat. They say it is to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon, and they don't sound all that upset about a secondary or maybe even third priority goal, regime change. And there is definitely a regime change because the supreme leader was killed over the weekend. Would you say that preventing them from having nuclear weapons was the goal here, or was the goal really regime change and freeing the Iranian people?
It's a combination, and it's very, very complex. The revolution, we call it occupation in 1979. And this was with a coalition of Marxist, communist, and Islamists and that they overthrew the Shah of the late Shah of Iran, King Reza Pahlavi. So now, all these years, the Iranians have been trying so hard to fight for their freedom. There's been absolutely no help, completely silence from the world. And, through different administrations with the United States, they would come to the table and try to negotiate. It's a sick cycle that keeps perpetuating itself. The Islamic regime comes and makes a few promises, signs a few deals, but the terror within the country continues. I was born in Iran, and from the moment that I was able to go to elementary school, they would take us, here, children go to enjoy their nutritional breaks. In Iran, we were forced to go and protest and chant. And from childhood, we were told to say death to America, death to Israel. And this has never stopped. And when you have the Islamic regime and their supporters in the United States, on American soil, burning American flag, calling death to America, and what do you expect? The terror is not just within the region; it is globally. And yes, the nuclear weapons. People are like, Iran doesn't have it. There are they want to conquer the world. And this is a part that a lot of people don't understand. And, Iranian people have been, begging for years and nobody listened. So finally, you have a president that took interest and, with his advisors, Elon Musk and a whole bunch of other people that started paying attention. And it wasn't until really recently, in January, people came out to protest for freedom. They cut internet. They cut all communication lines. They cut everything. So people were just in constant darkness. But they didn't care. This was it. They came out, demanding, the fall of this regime, and they chanted for the crown prince of Iran. His name is Reza Pahlavi. They honestly wrote his name in blood. Javid Shah, they call it, like long live the king. So people
Julie,
are calling on him.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to just pause for a second and back up a little bit because I want to understand a little bit of the context. You're an Iranian woman, and I want to understand what it's like as a woman in Iran. I'm led to believe that this regime that is now no longer in control of the country was very oppressive. I mean, they forced you to wear certain things. They restricted your education rights. You weren't even allowed in stadiums to go and watch a sporting event. Is all of that accurate, some of the things I've heard about the human rights oppression of women in Iran?
Oh, absolutely. You know what? I myself was affected by it 10 and a half years old when I was brutally attacked by Mali police for not covering my hair. And it took me 6 months to recover.
Wow.
My crime, because I did not wear a hijab. And in Islam, if you haven't reached the age of puberty, you're not really required to cover your hair. So after 79, there were no cinemas, no stadiums. There were, even if you had a VCR, VHS, like a movie, you would be taken to custody. Anything that you can imagine that we have in this, in our country.
Is it true? Is it true that you would need permission from your husband or your father to even travel?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. A girl and a boy cannot walk down the street because they will be taken in, and sometimes it would lead to death, execution, because you can only be accompanied by your father, your brother, or your husband. And there were times if a young woman and a young man were, let's say, engaged, and let's say they had to go out, they had to have a permission slip. They had to have documentation with them to prove that actually they were going to get married. And in other words, in the Islamic world, they were halal and not haram. So yes, and even with hijab, they were flocking, imprisoning and raping as young as you can imagine, because in their mind, a virgin or and if they rape a girl before execution, she will not enter heaven.
Wow.
And they would go to visit the families the next day with a box of sweets, and they would say, "Your daughter became a bride last night." It's been absolutely horrific. We know a lot of women that were given 25 to 50 lashes just for even like wearing hijab, but improper, maybe showing strand of hair. And that's what really led to September 16, 2022, when a 22-year-old Iranian girl by the name of Mahsa Amini was brutally attacked by morality police again, and taken into custody, and she died in their custody. And that's when also another uproar, another protest, and the country was outraged. It made headlines globally for Mahsa Amini, and there was a slogan made, "Women, Life, Freedom," and that wasn't supposed to be poetic. That was honestly, it was demand for action, demand for justice, because of everything that they were denied by the Islamic regime, and you don't see any even these days that they have taken, they have slaughtered people in Iran. And you know what? Even after death, the women, their uteruses have been hacked out for the regime to cover the severe, extreme sexual violence. And it's just been horrific. And it's so sad for us, especially for us Iranian women, to see, non-Iranians questioning and saying things like, "Oh, Iranian women are just upset because they can't flaunt their hair." But honestly, even in a democratic country, what is it so wrong about a woman wanting to flaunt her hair? Never mind, demanding for dignity and freedom. So a lot of things that you are hearing that has been caused by the hands of this regime is absolutely true, and even deeper than that. And it's when I say after 1979, everything changed. A public execution, it was like a everyday event. And I have seen so many clips of even, our LGBTQ plus communities, and this past weekend holding a picture of Khamenei and being interviewed, that they are siding with the regime, they're siding with the, with Ayatollah. I was in tears because I'm like, you guys are like even fighting for your pronouns, and we can't even be ourselves.
Wow.
And it's just like so difficult to watch. And since January, you don't see any of the union federations coming out. You don't see any feminist groups coming out. You don't see anybody coming out, standing with Iranian people, fighting, for their freedom, demanding justice. But then a lot of people are coming out, and even friends that know my story, they're telling me, "Oh, how do you feel about invasion?" Invasion happened in 1979. This is a rescue mission.
Right.
Like, people don't understand.
Julie, let me try and get just a little more context here before we talk about the current situation. You've talked about how oppressed women are, in particular, under this Iranian regime, and I understand that. But I also want to understand a little bit about the fights that have happened over the years for freedom. You mentioned an incredible example from a number of years ago, but even a few months ago, it seemed like the Iranian people were trying to rise up and overthrow the regime, and that led to a slaughter of, I'm told, 30,000 Iranians by the regime.
Yes, actually, that number is not correct, and it's 90 plus.
90,000.
Yes, and it's and that number of 35 to 40 that you hear, that was over 48 hours. And the thing is that the regime kept posting on X, kept telling the, media that, this is like Israelis, Israel and United States had paid people to go and protest. And this is not true. The regime itself, they brought in militias, like we talk about foreign interference, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from, Syria. Those people, their proxies to actually come and kill Iranian people. And, they also, like majority, they were going for, I don't know why, but we have received a lot of intel. They were going for the eye and the private parts. And, and the sad part is, and actually I have posted a very short documentary about the brutality that went on, and thousands and thousands and thousands of body bags, like you imagine like a garbage bag, like a black bag, and people didn't know that their loved ones were murdered. They had to go into places, open up these bags to find their loved ones. And if they were lucky to even find their loved one, the Islamic regime forced them to pay for it. And
Wow.
if they did not pay up, they would burn the bodies. And more than that, for every bullet that entered one of these brave people, they would charge for every bullet.
Wow. Oh, my God. Julie, one of the things that you mentioned a few minutes ago, and this has stuck with me since I was a kid. I remember growing up seeing on the news things like American and Israeli flags being burned in Iran and them chanting death to America, death to Israel. I want to understand, especially after what's happened, because I'm seeing pro-USA and pro-Israel rallies happening right now since this invasion of Iran began. And maybe invasion's not the right word. It seems like liberation might be a word that we could use, although I'm sure some people might disagree. I don't know. I want to understand, though, are the Iranian people anti-American and anti-Israeli, or is it just the Iranian regime?
It's the Iranian regime. The Iranian people, we have a long history, long friendship with the Jewish people. My own best friend, my childhood friend, was Jewish. We love Jewish people. We always had good relationship with Israel and United States. It's the Islamic regime that has made it its mission to destroy Israel, to destroy United States. Iranian people love Americans. We love Jewish people. Like, we don't have any conflict. We have a long history, and for any of your listeners to even go and look into history, during the war, the Germany, the Shah brought in so many Jewish people from Poland to give them sanctuary in Iran, over 100,000. So this is embedded in us. We don't have, actually, Iranians don't have any issues with anyone anywhere. We're, loving, caring people. It's the Islamic regime. They just, and I just want to make something clear for your listeners. This is not about Islam. This is not about Muslims. Millions of Iranian Muslim women are victims themselves. We have to separate tyranny, okay? it's the regime. It's a death cult, and all they know it's just to occupy and to kill, and that's it. And they don't care for anything else. And Iranians, we speak Farsi. Some of you may have heard Parsi or Persian. We do not speak Arabic, and we were forced. It didn't matter if you're a Muslim, because in Iran, we have so many different religions. We have, Christians, we have Jewish, we have Muslims themselves. It was the roots of Iran is Zoroastrian, and they forced us to read Quran. Quran is written in Arabic. We do not speak Arabic, and I want your audience to understand that. But this is the Islamic regime. So we don't hate America. We don't hate anyone. And that's why, and you know what? People in Iran, and during this protest, I kid you not, they came and they named a street after President Trump. And they begged him to come and help them. And yes, people, you hear people constantly saying Iranians need to free themselves. We've been trying for 47 years. And they say, oh, we don't need foreign interference. How many previous, U.S. administrations that you've sat sitting across, the Islamic regime trying to make deals, they have interfered in the way we wanted to, reclaim our country. And so for the first time, the President of the United States listened, and people begged him, and he told them, help is on its way. And they took his word for it. And you know what? And they're celebrating because this man made a promise, and he kept it to the Iranian people. So that's why people are coming out and genuinely, and this on the weekend in Los Angeles, flying in the air, Iranian, a message directly to President Trump that Iranians are grateful because they do see this as a rescue mission. They do see this as a liberation. And yes, we are going to be in charge of who is going to lead us. And we have someone, and his name is King Reza Pahlavi.
Okay.
He is the true leader.
Julie, I'm glad that you brought that up because that is one of my questions here. And I think it's a question for a lot of listeners, too, because they want to understand not just why this is happening, but what happens next. So the supreme leader is gone. It seems like the Iranian Guard and all of the people that were in power are slowly being rooted out by American and Israeli forces. Once they're gone, what happens then? Because you've mentioned, what's his name again?
Reza Pahlavi, the Crown Prince. The West knows him as Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi.
Okay, and he has offered to be somewhat of a transitional leader. In other words,
that's correct.
He will take over the country and lead it until what? A democratic election can be held? Could Iran return to being a democracy?
That's the hope. And he has a team. And you know what? He's been, because a lot of, there are different groups in Iran, and everybody wants a piece of it. And this man is uniting the entire country, okay? And he has a plan. And it's just that, that part about how he's going to get there, we're still in the works. But he is the true leader, and he's got a plan. He's got all of us behind him. And once he takes his position, yes, he wants to open it to secular democracy where, a state is not ruled by religion, where everybody can, live free and regardless of religion.
Do you think there's a time, any time in the near future, where someone who is an Iranian Canadian or any Canadian would be able to fly to Tehran, enjoy a vacation, see the sights, and walk around without a hijab or without the threat of being arrested and never being seen again?
Oh, that is absolutely our dream. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something on that note. When you talk about permission, if I may, I did not marry an Iranian man, and I married a man who was born and raised here from a whole different descent. And I have never been back to Iran, but when I was investigating as to if I could ever just go for a visit to show the country to my kids or my ex-husband at the time, one of the requirements was that my husband at the time had to provide a permission letter for me to enter and exit Iran. So,
Wow.
and so moving forward, we all praying. And, Iran is a beautiful country. I want your listeners to go and look at it. Iran, it has, 4 seasons. We have the beautiful spring with orange blossoms. We have summer, and we have, fall and winter. Yes, skiing. Yes, beaches. It's honestly a travel destination. It's if you can imagine the most beautiful beaches, and that's what I hope for. And I keep telling my family and friends that I hope that there will be a day that all of us, we can, go on a beach in one of the most beautiful beaches in Iran and set a bonfire and just dance around it and so free. And that is our vision. That's our hope for our people, for anyone, and for the, peace for the entire world. Because as long as you have this regime in power, there is no peace anywhere, because their mission is to destroy and take over. So, yes, and that's the hope. And I'd like to hang on to that hope that day soon will come.
Okay. And I hope for that, too, for the Iranian people, because it seems like they're very happy about what's going on. I saw those protests or rallies this weekend outside the U.S. Embassy. And when I heard the Iranian people waving U.S. flags and chanting USA, chanting for Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, I was shocked because I was always led to believe that the Iranians were our enemy. But it turns out we're not enemies with the Iranian people. It was that Iranian regime who now is in the process of falling.
That's right. Absolutely. And yes, we actually have gathered, with our fellow Iranians. We've been praying for the safety of, President Trump, for the military, the U.S. military, for the American people, for Benjamin Netanyahu, for IDF, because they are fighting for us, and for the all those countries that have been impacted, as you know. Just another thing, that the Islamic regime attacked several countries in the region, like Kuwait and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and Dubai. And there's no talk about it anywhere. They're only focused on Israel and United States. Iran, in less than 24 hours, attacked more Arabic countries than Israel has ever. And it's still, they constantly talk about Israel, and they're not condemning the Islamic regime. And that's shocking to us. But we're celebrating Khamenei's death because I just want to give an analogy. Imagine a woman is raped, and they find the rapist, and finally justice can be served. This man is responsible for millions of deaths, and every torture, every execution, every rape. He has the blood of Iranians on his hands. So collectively, as Iranian, when the head of the octopus, when the monster, when the murderer has been eliminated, people came out to celebrate, because that gives us hope for freedom and maybe a justice for a 16-year-old girl who was killed behind bars, for a pregnant woman who was shot to death when she was pregnant, for a 2-year-old being held in his father's arm who was shot, for a 3-year-old holding his mother's hand shot, for every single Iranian woman tortured, raped, uterus hacked out. That was justice. For fathers and mothers mourning the death of their babies, that was justice. For 47 years of hell, that was justice.
Do you think it's over? Is this the one that's going to stick? And are the Iranian people ready to rise up and take back their country? Because President Trump has made it very clear this is not an American occupation. It now falls on the Iranian people to take back their country. Is this the turning point where it's actually going to happen, do you think?
I hope so, but there are more people to eliminate because, like, even with Khamenei, he had his son, that people are worried. Like I said, they have so many proxies. And the regime, at the end of the day, the Iran's military and police, they have to take the side of people. That is required. As long as they are supporting the regime, that's going to be difficult. They have to stand with the Iranian people. The Islamic regime must surrender. And then that's when I can really, really relax and say, you know what, it's definitely over.
Julie, one of the things that I don't know if it's something we should be worried about. I think we probably should, but I've heard no shortage of stories that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has actually immigrated to Canada and in some cases may even have been given Canadian citizenship. Do Iranians here in Canada have reason to be worried as this is all happening over in the Middle East?
Oh, absolutely. We have the IRGC agents here. And I actually posted, if people want to see, go to Julie Rocchese on my X platform. And even this weekend, there were shooting actually that happened, Richmond Hill, Iranian store owner, I think 17 shots. There are news that is coming out just this past weekend about some terrorist activities. And also, not only IRGC, well, Canada actually knows there are over 700 of them here. They know, but they're refusing to send them back or to prosecute of whatever is necessary. And they are dangerous to the Iranian diaspora here. I personally, myself, in 2022, I was receiving an award. And for the first time, there was a little bio, and I forgot that it was going to be posted. The organizer actually received a death threat about me.
Wow.
So, and this past weekend, also Goldie Galmari received an email for a death threat. So they are here. They're real. They just want to eliminate. They're upset that Khamenei was eliminated, and they're taking actions. So they want to attack Iranians here and abroad who is against the Islamic regime. So we have to make sure that our government, our prime minister, our foreign minister, our CMP, our police in different provinces are on full alert because they are active and ready to go to eliminate any targets that they have been given the names.
Are you worried about your personal safety?
I am. And that's and my family have mentioned it, and that's, to be honest with you, that was one of the main reasons I stayed quiet all these years, because I look at life through a lens of a mother, and my job, my main job, is to protect my children. So when you come out and talk about it, you become a target. But the thing is, we're talking about truth here. I'm not attacking anyone. I am speaking about, my own experience. I'm speaking about my people, what they have experienced. This is truth. And if the truth, they can't handle it. So, of course, they want to go and silence us. But you can't just do nothing. And my mother always says, fear equals death. And this is why for 47 years, we have endured this brutality because of fear. But we can't remain afraid anymore. We have to speak up. And we're leaving countries that, we're supposed to have protection. And the law enforcement, they have to do something. And that's why I personally have requested for them to investigate, to follow up, and do what is necessary to remove IRG agents and their proxies from our soil.
We're coming up to time here, so I just want to wrap on this. Where can regular run-of-the-mill Canadians who are interested in this and sensitive to what's happening, where can we get reliable information? Because it seems like there's a lot of misinformation that's floating around out there. You also mentioned that in the opening segment here. Is there a good, reliable place, a specific account we should be following, or something where we can say, okay, if they've published it, it's true?
Yes, it is one thing I want to, just before that, I want to differentiate some of the groups and with the Iranian people. So our flag, our original and the rightful flag, is the flag of Iran with the three colors, with the logo of lion and sun flag. That's the Persian flag. And majority of Iranians are supporting King Reza Pahlavi, or as you would know it, Prince King Reza Pahlavi. So sources that support him support us, because also there are other groups, Mujahideen, MEK, that they come out and they talk about the tyranny of this regime, but they're also terror in a different mask. They're the ones that actually were also responsible for the occupation in 1979, but suddenly they have come out and they're throwing information that it really confuses the non-Iranians. So King Reza Pahlavi, any sources that brings information regarding that is an absolute support of Iranians and what they want and true information. And you know what, U.S., White House, okay, Israeli Mossad, it's up-to-date information on X, and you can go and get all the information needed.
All right. Julie Rocchese, thank you so much for your time. I know that you're very busy and you're getting a lot of interview requests, but I'm really glad that you could prioritize mine today, because I think this is really valuable information. And I truly feel like there's a lot of Canadians who saw this happen. And we have some pretty biased media coverage here in Canada. I don't know if you've seen any of what's been on some of our mainstream media outlets, but it doesn't seem like it's fair coverage. And I wanted people to hear it directly from an Iranian woman who is connected to this and has been fighting for this since 1979. So I want to thank you so much for coming on to clarify what the position is and explain to us what the actual issue is. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.